She is the Chief Executive Officer of Women Heart, the National Coalition for Women with Heart Disease based in Washington, D.C. Celina, welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm so excited to be here. And you know, when you sent me the recipe, I was thinking.
Well, I'm glad you like the recipe. It's delicious, it's heart healthy, it's simple. It's all the things that will get somebody to make an easier transition into eating healthier. So I'm excited about fixing that with you too. But before we get into that, please tell us a bit about yourself. I know we connected off screen because I discovered that Celina is of Filipino and Basque heritage, and I grew up in the Bay Area, and I have many, many, many friends that are Filipino, so we've connected there. But please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career and what you're doing.
Wonderful, yeah. So I came to Women Heart about a year ago, and my career has largely been in running small nonprofits in the health sector. So previous to Women Heart, I was working in London, and I was the executive director of the Global Alliance for Chronic Diseases. So eating heart healthy has been, you know, not just a personal passion of mine, but a professional passion for quite some time. And before that, I worked for the UN. I was based in Angola for a few years.
Wow.
And with previous jobs, traveled to quite a few different places around the world, and just really got the bug for eating a variety of foods and culinary delights that may not be able to be experienced on a regular basis sitting in one place.
That is very interesting. I mean, and I think because you've lived so many different places, you really have a broad view of health, of cuisine, and I'm sure you're able to make that connection as you look worldwide as well.
Absolutely, yes, and I think that you know, what one culture might think to be unhealthy food or undesirable food, you find in a different culture, they find that to be their favorite cuisine or their celebratory cuisine sometimes.
Right.
So yeah, that's exactly right.
So we're talking about women's heart health. So that is your focus now. That's where you are. So it's a beautiful mission. It's a necessary mission, and it's one of those things that women's heart health is overlooked. I've done some reading, and it's interesting that people pay a lot more attention to men. You hear about men having heart attacks more often than women. Not that that's the case, but that's what you hear. So tell me a little bit more about that and how you got involved with the organization.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you first about my involvement with the organization, and then I'll go a little bit more into the reason that Women Heart exists and needs to exist as an organization. I came to Women Heart really thinking about women's health in general. And I was quite young. I was in my late teens when I lost my mother quite early. She was 39 when she passed away from colon cancer. And it's an unwritten rule in my family that health is we call it our family business. So I have two sisters, and the three of us all work in some facet of health. And I think that's because we've been motivated to help other families prevent the early loss of loved ones as we experience in our own life. And so when Women Heart approached me about this role, I thought, wow, this is an opportunity for me to have an impact on the #1 killer of women today, which is heart disease.
Wow.
So that I can prevent families, across the country from losing perhaps a mother or an auntie or a grandmother earlier than they should, really, by tackling this really big and important issue. And as you say, an issue that is not thought about enough, primarily because historically, when we think about heart disease, we think about men. We think about the typical signs of heart attacks, which are different, actually, between men and women. And so oftentimes, even women themselves who might be experiencing heart attacks don't realize it because they're not experiencing the more traditional symptoms that we might talk about more broadly as symptoms of heart attacks and heart disease. So it's been a really fascinating journey, and every day that I'm with Women Heart, I am more and more grateful that this opportunity came my way, because there's so much work to be done. And the progress that we've made on heart disease from 30 years ago, when the country did some really good work and research into heart disease, those gains have largely been seen in massive reductions in heart disease among men. Oh, wow. Because the research was focused so closely and so specifically on them, that women in some ways need to catch up with that progress.
Interesting. The #1 killer.
That's right.
I would not have known that. I would have definitely said some kind of cancer, maybe breast cancer or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that just shows the success that the cancer community has had in raising awareness, which is important, absolutely important. And I think it merely spurs us in the heart health community to do a better job of raising that awareness.
Wow. So again, let's talk about your global view, since you've had a global footprint with the different organizations you've worked with. Yeah. Is there a difference between chronic diseases in low and middle class countries versus the United States?
You know, I love this question, because I think that there is still a common misunderstanding that in low and middle income countries, the drivers of their disease and deaths are mainly things like malaria and tuberculosis, which is still a problem. But now what we're seeing is that these countries are looking at a double burden. They are still dealing with malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, sometimes cholera, at the same time as there has been a dramatic increase in chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, mental health issues. These are rising in those communities, in those countries. And the way I see it, it's partly, those diseases are partly a consequence, ironically, of economic development.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So it's sort of this, it's a double-edged sword, because of course, low and middle income countries want to prosper economically.
Yes.
And yet what we see is when that happens in an economy, you see rises in diabetes, you see rises in heart disease, because people are, they're walking less, yes. Right? Because they now are driving cars. They are eating less healthy, because now they have jobs where they're busy and they need fast, convenient food. And so the same trajectory we've seen in the US is happening in these other economies. Absolutely. And as a consequence, again, there's the good side of that, right? They are prospering a little bit more, but they're also what comes with that is the chronic diseases that we in this country have been dealing with for decades.
There is a direct correlation between the food imports and disease around the world. And I, like you, have traveled, and I've noticed that, traditional diets really, by and large, give us what we need. It's when the modern diets start to come in that we start to see those issues. Traditional diets are pretty much what you can get locally sourced. It's things like fish, it's things like grains, it's things like different types of tubers, root vegetables and things like that.
Absolutely.
And they may not necessarily be sexy foods, but they're the foods that are nutrient dense that give you what you need and keep you alive. And it's really fascinating to see that around the world, the West is seen as aspirational. And when we start eating more westernized foods, you see those diseases proliferate.
Cynthia, I'm sure you have a local farmers market near you, as do I, down the street from me here, that I go to every week. And that, you know, it's coming full circle, right? Those farmers markets are teaching us to eat locally and to eat seasonally, right? To get back to our roots as humans.
Yes.
And so when you have, you know, in my experience, for example, having lived in Angola, when you have Angolans abandoning their traditional diets, when that McDonald's opens up in the middle of Luanda, their capital,
right,
they're moving away from something that we are now trying to get back to.
exactly, exactly.
Eating locally, you know, being getting to know our farmers, be closer to where our food is produced. And so, you know, I just find that fascinating, just as, you know, as a traveler and an observer of food and culinary culture. It's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's get started on this, and then we'll continue to talk a little more. So the dish that we're fixing today is a Faro salad. It's a Mediterranean Faro salad. I love Faro because it is one of these really hearty grains. I mean, there are times that I have fixed it where people have even thought that it was some kind of ground meat or something. It's really nice. It cooks up very easily. And one of the great things about Faro is it absorbs flavor very easily. So there's different ways to fix it. We're going to be doing it in a salad application, like a grain salad. When you prepare this, one of the ways to really get flavor in there is to prepare it with broth, like a low sodium broth. I sometimes will drop a few sprigs of thyme in there to flavor the water. The thing that we want to do as we think about eating healthier and cooking healthier, I always try to cook things that have so many different textures and flavors that I don't need a lot of salt. You know, I try to make sure that we've got so much going on in there that the salt is just the final thing that you add. It's not an ingredient. One of the things that also contributes to bad health are, you know, it's a high sodium intake, and people of color in particular love salt, and they and we use too much of it.
Yes.
So so what we're fixing today again is the Faro. We have some steamed broccoli. We have some chickpeas. We have I'm using sun-dried tomatoes. I don't know if you have sun-dried or fresh tomatoes.
I have sun-dried tomatoes.
Sun-dried tomatoes, which are great because it's the lycopene, which is great for you. And what I love about the sun-dried tomatoes, they have this real depth of flavor. And the ones that we're using have been, they've been in olive oil. So we take them out of the oil and chop them up, and they're seasoned as well. So that adds another layer of flavor. And then finally, I have here some chopped cilantro, or you can use chopped parsley. The great thing about cilantro that I love to tell people is that it is one of the ways that when you eat cilantro, it takes the metals out of your body. You know, there's so many things just flying around in the air. This is a way to add flavor and fight back against something getting into your system that's to wreak havoc. So those are the ingredients for the salad. The first thing we're gonna make is our dressing. I actually missed something. It is not really necessary, but if you tend to like things a little sweeter, it's a little bit of agave or a little bit of honey that goes in the dressing, but it's negligible.
Okay.
So let's get started with our dressing. And in our dressing, we have some mustard, we have some avocado or olive oil, we have a little salt, we have lemon juice. Okay, so you ready? So the first thing that we're gonna add in here is our Dijon mustard. And we've got about 2 teaspoons we're gonna put in there. All righty. The next thing is our lemon juice. And we're gonna use the juice of 1 lemon, approximately 3 teaspoons, depending on how juicy your lemon is. It may not, you may or you may not need a whole lemon. This is a great dressing, and we're not going to use it all, so you can always just put it in a container and save some for later. This dressing is just going to be like a slight drizzle on the dish. We don't want it to be overwhelmed with that. We're going to hold off on the water for a little bit. We're going to add our olive oil. A little bit of cumin is going to go in there.
I love cumin, Cynthia.
I love cumin too. Okay. We've got our, okay. And we're going to do a little bit of lemon zest. So we're going to use that same lemon that we just had. Yep, and just do some lemon zest on there. Zest. We're going to do a few twists of salt there. And now we're just going to whisk it all together. And then we'll taste it and see if we need we need something else. I'm actually going to add a little bit of honey to this just to give it a little sweetness. I'm one of those people that likes all kinds of flavors in I like it sweet, salty, tangy.
Yeah.
So let me taste it and see. That's delicious.
Right.
So taste yours, see if you need any more salt or anything in yours. Again, there's going to be so much going on in here. Not having a lot of salt in the beginning is fine. If we need to add a touch at the end, that's what we'll do. So we're going to put our dressing aside. Then we're going to get our big bowl. And we're going to put our 2 cups of Faro that we have cooked and brought to room temperature. Now, you know, if you want to do this kind of like a pilaf, so it's a little warm, you can do that too. You don't have to cool it down, but we're doing this as a salad, so that's why we've cooled ours.
Yeah.
To this, we are going to add our chickpeas. We're going to add our sun-dried tomatoes. We're going to add our cilantro or parsley and our broccoli. And what I love about this, we've got great fiber in here too. This is really, and we're just going to just lightly mix this up so that it is well combined. This smells good, it looks good. This is something that you can eat a hearty portion of this and you are okay. This can be served with a grilled piece of fish, a grilled chicken breast. You can eat it on its own. You can put a couple slices of avocado on this and it's all good. So you see how simple this is? So we've got it all mixed up. And now we're just going to drizzle this dressing over it, just a light coat. We're not going to use all of it. I would say we're maybe going to use half of the dressing. And we're just going to mix it a little more to make sure that it is well combined. And what do you know?
Wow.
we have completed a dish, and let's get a little taste of it and see if we need, if you want to do a sprinkle of salt, if you want to do a sprinkle of pepper. What's great about this, again, I love to always bring attention to the fact that we're not using a lot of seasoned salt. It's bright, it's fresh, you know, it's delicious. See.
I love the colors.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yep. Now, one of the things I say is that people eat with their eyes as well as with their mouth. You always want to, you know, make sure you present, if you're serving, if you're eating it if you're doing it for yourself, maybe not so much, but I think, hey, why not make a beautiful dish for yourself? So I'd like to always take my time and make a beautiful plate. But this is a super simple dish. This is a dish you can substitute the Faro for quinoa if you want to.
Oh, yes.
You could do that. If you're more of the gluten-free path.
Now, Cynthia, you also had me slice up some green onions.
Ooh, did we forget the green onions? You can drop those in there. Go ahead and drop those. You can either drop those in or you can sprinkle them on the top.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like a topping.
Mm-hmm. And so this, if you can see the overhead.
Beautiful.
This is our Mediterranean Faro salad. And again, it can be used as a pilaf. Beautiful. Great job. Great job. Great job. So now that we've got the food out the way, because this was just my excuse to talk to you. So let's get back to let's get back to the heart of the matter. So I understand that you have recently launched a new curriculum where you're developing community educators and the sort. Could you share some about that program and tell us what the purpose of the program is?
Absolutely. So it is our annual Science and Leadership Symposium, which for the entire history of Women Heart has been held in person at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. So we work with some amazing superstars in the field of cardiology to really help us and help our volunteers that we call champions, Women Heart champions, learn about heart disease so that they themselves can share that information with their peers and with their communities back at home. And because of what 2020 has been for all of us, this is the first year in our history that we are going to conduct this symposium online. And so we are launching an entirely new curriculum, of course, based on the original curriculum of the Science and Leadership Symposium, but bringing it over onto an online learning platform where we are able to invite our trainees, our champions to be, class of 2020, in the comfort of their own homes, which we're very, very excited about. You know, when the pandemic first hit, we were really concerned about how to continue our programming with the community, a community that is the most vulnerable to COVID-19 infections. And so the fact that our partners at Mayo and our new partners in terms of this virtual learning platform, we're really excited to do this. We were even more excited, and we were able to put together what I think is going to be an incredible curriculum that will span over the course of about 4 weeks, from the end of September through to the end of October, where our champions will be learning the same things that they learned in Rochester, Minnesota, which is really what's heart disease, what are the different medical devices in their hearts and, in various parts of their cardiovascular system. They learn how to tell their story in a compelling way, and they learn how to be there for one another in terms of conducting support networks, which again are happening virtually. It's been certainly a steep learning curve for all of us at Women Heart, but as well for our community of champions. They are heart survivors, but I love to call them thrivers. These are women who are living with heart disease and are still running marathons, are still working in their jobs, are still raising their children. And the fact that they have experienced heart disease has meant that they have taken that experience to give back to their communities. I'm so lucky every day to get to work with this set of women.
Beautiful, beautiful. So tell me, what are some early signs? So you're saying that women a lot of times end up getting more damage and dying because of heart issues, because we're looking for signs that are most associated with men. So tell me, what are the signs that women need to look for that can indicate that there's something going on with their heart?
I think the main sign, Cynthia, is an unexplained fatigue. And that's a really, I say that with a little bit of caution, because we all get tired. We all have had long days or long weeks where we're just exhausted. But when you have a fatigue that is unexplainable, I think that's really the first sign. Oftentimes, when we talk about sort of traditional signs of heart disease or heart attack, we hear about shooting pain down the left side.
Yeah, right.
I remember that from health class in high school. And, the majority of women that I've talked to who've experienced heart attacks never had that. So, there's also, I think, made perhaps more traditional signs of shortness of breath, of, waking up one day and not being able to climb the same set of stairs that you were able to climb yesterday. Wow. Or having that process be a little bit more labored than you think is normal. And I think that the number one thing that we need to consider is that we need to ask for help. And I think as women, that's really hard for us to do. And so calling for help, going to the hospital, calling your doctor is really important. I think all too often women tell themselves, oh, it's nothing, or I'll sleep it off, or, if it still hurts, in a week's time, then maybe I'll call the doctor. But it's really, really important, and we know our bodies. Yes. And so when you know that something's not quite right, it's really important to make that call. And, and we might risk what we think to be embarrassment if it's nothing, but that is a much smaller price to pay than if something was really, really wrong and, you didn't make that call.
That's really interesting, because the other day, there's in this period of this pandemic, we're hypersensitive to things.
Right.
And if you are a hypochondriac, which my husband sometimes accuses me of being, you're kind of like this. But the other day I felt discomfort, and I said to him, what side would I feel pain on? Which extremity would I feel pain on if there was something going on with my heart? So I immediately went to what a man's signs were. I had no idea that it is simply, did you wake up this morning feeling extremely fatigued? And those are things that are almost easier to spot. So thank you for sharing that, because I would not have known, and I consider myself a pretty well-informed person. And you're right, women in just their daily pushing, constantly pushing
Right.
themselves, you get kind of, sometimes fatigue is your baseline.
Yeah,
So how do I determine what is fatigue beyond my normal fatigue?
that's
And do I
exactly.
have time to, can I schedule in this fatigue? How
That's
do
right.
I, how do I deal with this?
That's right. And so that's why I think it's very important for us to be listening to our bodies and
Mm-hmm.
to get to know our bodies. I mean, sometimes I speak to women and they say, oh yeah, I have niggles here and there, but I'm proud to say I've never, I haven't been to a doctor in 10 years time. I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure that, I think what we need to be doing is knowing what our, what's our baseline?
Mm-hmm.
What's our baseline for fatigue? What's
Mm-hmm.
our baseline for, running up and down stairs? What's our baseline for how much sleep we get? I mean, these are various markers to tell us that something isn't quite right. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, it's not just men, or it's not just, those around us who may minimize what we're experiencing. It's very often us ourselves,
Yes.
women ourselves sort of downplay what is going on, again, because as you say, we can't schedule it in. But it's so important to listen to those signs. Those signs are our body telling us
Mm-hmm.
something's not right, and you need to take a rest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as we wrap up, I have a couple more questions for you. One of them is, you spent time in the UK. When you came back to the US, did you notice a difference in eating styles, in diet and lifestyle?
Yes. Well, the biggest uh, difference I noticed, and I use that word intentionally, biggest,
Hmm.
is portion size.
Oh.
The portion sizes in restaurants here, it's an unbelievable amount of food that we are served when you order, a meal, and you think, wow, they expect this to be for one person. And so, of course, I've gotten now into the habit of either sharing one meal or one order of something, or taking half of it home.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to force myself to, finishing what is served to me. But, it took me a while to recognize, oh, hold on a second. This is way more than I would get served in a restaurant
Right.
in the UK.
Yeah, and even if it's a healthy dish, something that I've had to learn, just because it's healthy doesn't mean you need to eat the whole thing either.
That's absolutely
Moderation and portion control. It's something that and when you're right, when here in the States, when you see this thing full and they bring it to you, you think that that's one portion. No, it's not. That's actually 6 portions right here in this bowl.
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's retraining, not only retraining your palate, but it's also retraining your approach to what is a serving.
Right. And to tell yourself you are in control of how much you eat. Not the service that you've been, not the portion that you've been served in the restaurant.
That's something that I've had to learn too, is I grew up in a home, I grew up in a first generation home where, you didn't waste food. If it was put on the table, you ate it, And it's so funny, I talk with my brother about this from time to time, that I never knew what satisfied felt like. I only knew stuffed. Like I had to learn what it felt like to be satisfied, because for us, you ate until you couldn't eat anymore. And that's when you stopped.
Yeah. Well, and I love this trick that a friend of mine taught me years ago. And she said, if you feel like you might want a second helping or, more food, just give it 10 minutes. Just sit there for 10 minutes, and continue on in your conversation at the dinner table, and see if 10 minutes later and oftentimes I would just forget, I would forget that I even wanted a second helping, because by then my food has sort of caught up with my stomach and my fullness. And I think, oh, I'm glad I waited. Otherwise I would have been eating to the point of overstuffed probably.
Absolutely. I know the drill. I know the drill. So what would you like to leave our viewers with? What is the message that you would like to empower our women viewership with, and men who have mothers and sisters and daughters? What message do we want to leave with them? Do you want to leave with them today?
You know, we've spoken a lot today about culture and history and the culinary aspects of that culture and history. And I think that the big takeaway is I want everyone to think about the joy of food, and that food is such a powerful tool to bring us together. It's such a powerful proxy for love in a family, among people, and healthy food can still be joyful.
Yes.
And flavorful, and it still can, you know, make people smile, and it can still really feed, you know, more than just our bellies. It can feed our hearts, and that's the message. You know, I think sometimes we get really caught up in counting calories and, you know, making sure that, you know, it's sort of, you know, it's exactly this kind of diet or that kind of diet. But in my world, and certainly with my family, food is our number one source of joy. So
yes,
the message.
Yeah, great. Those are great final words to leave us with. Appreciate that. That is so true. Here at Monarch Magazine, we say that we create incredibly delicious food that just happens to be good for you. And so it is absolutely possible to eat food that nourishes and repairs your body and strengthens your body. And it's not gonna, when you finish eating it, you don't feel like you have to lay down. You're actually energized and you're ready for your day. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. We hope that maybe in the future we can have you back and talk about what's going on and what you've accomplished, and how we can assist in your charge to women with heart issues.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Lynn. It's been so fun. And now I have a brand new recipe and I have lunch. So that's fun.
Well, take care. Thank you everyone for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.